Hello friends, welcome back to my channel where I like to make, create, and inspire fun art things with you through my DIYs. My name is Justina and today is 80 days till Halloween, and do I have the DIY project for you today? I am super excited to share because this DIY project is 3 feet tall, which is still kind of small, but it makes a big impact. All of the supplies that I'm using you can find at Dollar Tree. They're usually around their Halloween section, and some pool noodles that you can find right now. If not at Dollar Tree, you can find them at Five Below for $1 or Walmart for 98 cents. But if you are new here and you haven't yet subscribed, I hope you do that today. All you have to do is click on that big red subscribe button down below. It is totally free, but don't forget to click on the bell notification so YouTube can always notify you every time I upload a new video. If you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy that you clicked on today's video. If you are enjoying today's content, don't forget to smash that thumbs up button. It really does help out my channel. If you know one spooky friend that would enjoy today's video, also please share it to at least one friend. Now, with all that being said, let's just jump right into it and let's art today. Now, to begin with, here are some supplies that you're going to need for this project. You're going to need a flower pot, a pool noodle, a yardstick, some scary eyes, and some buckets from Dollar Tree. Now, I have my flower pot from an old flower that I had previously, but like I mentioned before, everything you can find at Dollar Tree right now. My Dollar Tree is not selling their Halloween supplies just yet. I really feel like my Dollar Tree always takes their sweet time. However, you can find these if your Dollar Tree is selling their Halloween supplies. Now, the first thing I needed to do was remove everything from the packaging, so this scary eyes right here and the buckets. And once I did that, I am going just to use one for right now. So one bucket and one spooky eye. Now, I really like these because they came with a plastic covering on top, so it kind of makes the eye look more realistic. I do want to mention I have seen different types of eyes at Dollar Tree. If you're not looking for a spooky DIY, you can go for more of a cutesy kid-friendly one, but I really like this one. And as you see here, I'm dry fitting it into my bucket because I wanted this to look like it was in a vessel, like the eye was hiding within the bucket. And so I am just playing around with this. Now, these eyes do have a adhesive on the back, so that might help if you want to use it on a flat surface. However, like I mentioned, I wanted this to look like it was encased in something. Now, my bucket was a little bit too long of a bucket, so I'm just cutting it down to size. Once again, this is totally optional. You can just make your eye on a flat surface and create the roundness around it. I am going to make a creepy plant that you will see here, just so that we understand what is going on here. So once again, I am dry fitting it inside of the bucket to make sure that it fits all the way around. And before I actually adhere it down to the bucket, I want it to have a more creepy vibe. So I am painting the inside of the bucket just halfway using my acrylic paint from Walmart. It's the apple barrel in flat black. After I was done painting, I did set it off to the side to dry completely. Since this is acrylic paint, it does dry quickly. Next, it's time for my pool noodle. Now, this is a half of a pool noodle because I already cut it down to size. However, I need to place it onto my yard stake, which I found at Dollar Tree, like I mentioned earlier. Now, to place it onto my stake, all I needed to do was cut a straight line all the way down using a really sharp X-Acto knife. Now, I'm just cutting one half of it. You don't want to go completely through it to cut it completely in half. That way you can just slide your stake right in, and then you can close it up with a little bit of hot glue or tape. I used hot glue, but I forgot it was on the hottest setting, so it started to melt my pool noodle. So make sure if you are using hot glue, use it on the low setting. So now that my bucket is dry, it is now time to fit my eyeball inside of the bucket. Now, on this bucket, I was trying to find the crease where the two papers meet together to create a bucket. That way I know which side is my bottom of my eye. So once again, I am just dry fitting it in here, trying to make it as even as possible and to make sure that my eye is leveled. And then I'm going to take some hot glue on the back side and glue down all of the edges. I do go around about 2 to 3 times to really make sure that eye is really secure. Now that I'm done with my eye, I wanted to make a little head for my little creature here. And I took the other half of my pool noodle that I used at the very beginning and I cut that in half, and now I'm cutting those halves in half again. As you see here, I'm just using my X-Acto knife and I am trying to make them as even as possible. I didn't go all the way through, so as you see here, I'm just breaking them apart. Now that I have all of my halves, I want to add them to my bucket, and as you see here, my bucket has a little lip, and that is where I am going to put pool noodle up against so that I have a even spaced head, as you see here. So the first thing I did was add a large dollop of hot glue. Now this hot glue was on the lower settings, which you can do with using pool noodles. You just have to hold it in place until it's completely dry. Once that side was completely dry, as you see here, I'm just rounding it out, going around the bucket and then cutting it down to size. Then I am adding more hot glue and attaching the other side to this side of the bucket. That way I don't have to use so many pool noodles and I get the rounded shape of a head that I'm going for. Then I'm going to continue adding the pool noodles right next to it, getting as closely as possible so that it looks like one cohesive head, but still look like a plant-like creature. Then once again, I am folding it across itself and then cutting it down to size and then hot gluing that side down into place. Now for this area, I did 3 pool noodles to make this side. I know that's confusing. So I did 1 in the center and 2 around it. Now for the next layer, I went underneath the first pool noodles that I laid down. As you see here, I went underneath and then I did the exact same thing, which is cut it down to size, add a generous amount of hot glue, and hold it into place until it was completely dry. And then I did the exact same thing for the other side, going underneath the pool noodles that I originally put down as well. Then for the remainder space, I just took leftover pool noodles and slide them into any places that you see the bucket, and they slide in pretty nicely because they have a rigid edge. And then I glued all of those into place, and here is how my little creature head looks. I like the roundness that it has and all of these rigid edges to make it more creepy. Now that we have our head, we need to attach it to its body, which is that yardstick that we covered earlier. And as you see here, I'm just pushing it through the pool noodles that is attached to the back of the head. And then I'm going to place him into a position that I like, and then I hot glue him down into place as well. I used a bunch of hot glue and wait for it to completely dry. Moving on to the bucket, I have this one here, but it is too deep and I wanted it to be a little bit taller, so I'm adding some of these caps from canned sprays that I had on hand, and I'm just going to add a huge dollop of hot glue, place those caps right into the hot glue, hold it into place until it was dried completely, and I did it for the whole bottom of my flower pot. Now if you have a flower pot that you like and the depthness of it, you can skip this part. Next, I am going in with some foam that I just had on hand, but you can always use foam from Dollar Tree, and I'm cutting it down to size and hot gluing it all on the bottom of my flower pot. That way when we add our yardstick, it has plenty to adhere it down to. I am using all different shapes and sizes and filling up all of the gaps until the whole thing is completely covered. Here is how it looks after I have all of my foam in there. I did hot glue everything down so it it would stay down into place. Next, for an added effect, since this is a plant creature, I wanted it to look like it was busting out of the plant. So I am finding the weak point into my flower pot, taking an X-Acto knife and making a X. You want to be really careful because after I cut this, the plastic was extremely sharp. So make sure you craft carefully. And then I'm just pulling it back so that it looks like it was broken out of. Then when I have all of my pieces pulled out, so it looks like my little creature busted out of the flower pot, I'm adding another pool noodle on the inside. Then I'm going to add a bunch of hot glue, once again on the low setting. This will still melt your pool noodle and foam, but it will melt them together, and you just need to hold it in place until it dries completely so that it adheres down to one another. Now, if you do not want to use hot glue, you can always use a stronger adhesive like E6000 or super glue. I just like using hot glue for video purposes, and plus it is much quicker to get it all done using hot glue. Now, I did take extra precautions like using tape to hold down my project as well, as you will see here. Now, since this is a creepy part of the plant that is busting through the pot, I wanted it to have a unique shape, so I'm just rounding it off. Once again, adding a little bit of hot glue at the bottom edge, and then as you see here, I will cut that pool noodle once again in half to make it look like the roots are coming off. Now, as you see here in a few seconds, my hot glue did not dry completely and it started to peel off. And that's when the tape comes in handy. I added a bunch of pieces of painter's tape once again down to it with some hot glue, and I let that dry completely. Now, this does work. Once again, you can always use a stronger adhesive. Now that my plant leg was holding up, I took the X-Acto knife and started cutting more of that pool noodle on the edge to make smaller pieces, because I really wanted this to look like the root system was taking over. I will cut little triangles on the edges just to make it look more creepy. Remember, this is totally optional. However you want your plant to look, you can totally create it and make it different than what I'm doing here. Then I will take some of those pieces and start gluing them all over my flower pot. Hold it into place until it was completely dry. Once I was done with that, I wanted to add my body part of my plant into the plant bucket. And since this was all foam and that is a stake, all I had to do was press the stake into the foam part. And then I'm adding a bunch of hot glue on top of the stake, as you see here. Now, as you see, the foam was starting to melt, so I added more pool noodles on top of the hot glue that I just added so that everything would melt together and will hold the stake into place. I do add rocks later on, once again, just to hold everything nicely, but you will see that later on. I needed to add more of the vines or the legs or the arms of my plant creature, so as you see here, I'm taking more halves of the pool noodles, adding it to my little creature here, adding a bunch of hot glue, and since this is all foam, I did use some wooden stakes to help me hold everything into place too until everything dried completely. I am using more painter's tape just to help along with this project, because I realized at this point the tape did really help me adhere down the pool noodle to the plastic much better than just the pool noodle, and I didn't have to hold it as long since I added another piece of tape on top of it. Then I will continue just adding halves of pool noodles everywhere until I get the desired look that I am going for. But this is really up to you. You can make this as large or as small as you want. The creativity on this project is endless. Once that was done, here is how my little plant creature looks thus far. I absolutely love it. Please excuse my bags over there. I did not even notice until after I was done filming. So then I'm covering that up for you so you can get a clearer view of my little plant creature here. I absolutely adore him, and I just love how it looks like he's just busting out of the flower pot. Now that I have him at this stage, I wanted to paint him just to get him a little bit creepier. So I am taking him outside, and I am going to use my Rust-Oleum spray paint, this satin red and this flat black. I really love this duo because it kind of makes it look rustic and old, and when you mix the red with the black, it kind of turns brown. So I did take it outside and I did start spraying it. Now, when spraying foam, it does tend to melt the foam, but if you stand at a really far distance like I am here and put on really light coats, you can really paint the pool noodles without damaging it. So I did add on really light coats, stand as far as I can, and just started spray painting. I started off with the red satin spray paint, as you see here, because also since this is a creature, I wanted it to look spooky, and some of that red did look like blood splatters to me. Once again, totally optional. If you want a cutesy creature, you can always paint it like purple or pink. Then I went in with a black spray paint, once again adding really light coats until I got the desired look that I'm going for. Once I was done spray painting, I noticed that my creature needed a little friend. It just looked too plain, so I took that other eyeball and half of this pumpkin from a foam pumpkin that I had from Dollar Tree, and I want to make it a little baby or a little friend. So the first thing I needed to do was cut down my eye because it was a little bit too large, and I first cut off the plastic that is on top. Make sure to cut it as evenly as possible, and to be really careful if you decide to do this as well, because cutting that plastic, it tends to get really sharp. After I have that off, I then started cutting the eyeball down to size. I did kind of measure it, but I'm pretty much eyeballing the cut, no pun intended. And I am just going in a rounded circle so that I have a nice rounded shape to fit inside of this little half pumpkin. Now, after I dry fitted it, I just needed to cut off a little piece because that was just in the way. And then I will cut down the plastic so that it will fit on top of my little eyeball, so that my eyeball looks nice and shiny and realistic. Now that I have both of my pieces where I like it, I needed to paint my little pumpkin on the inside, and I am using my acrylic black paint from Apple Barrel in the color black. And I'm just going to add a nice generous amount only on the outer edges because I will paint the backside a different color. Once that was completely dry, it was now time to attach the eyeball into its little home, and I am using once again some hot glue to attach everything together. Like I mentioned before, that is a big sticker, so if you wanted to, you could just peel off the back and place it down, but I wanted to make sure that it was adhered down nicely and it didn't move. Once that was done, I just added little drops of hot glue to the outer edges so that I can place that plastic piece right on top to make my little eyeball nice and shiny. Now that that was attached, I just needed to paint the back of it with using my Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in the color Irish Green. And I'm not trying to get full coverage because I will cover it later on into the project. But once that was nice and covered, I wanted to add a stake to the back of it so that I can add him into the pot with his friend. Now, once again, I'm using a really large stake from Dollar Tree. It was one of their larger ones. I'm not sure if they still carry it. And of course, when I placed it in there, I did not look at which direction the eyeball was facing, so I had to remove it and stake it again, and I'm attaching it using some hot glue to hold it into place. Once that was done, all I had to do was stab it into the foam on the bottom and make sure he was in the direction I wanted him to be in, and then press down firmly. Now, I did start painting the stake, however, I do end up covering it with another pool noodle, and I also paint that pool noodle using using the same spray paint that I used earlier. And then as you see here, I am going in with my Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in the color Irish Green and just adding little splotches everywhere. Since this is a creature, I wanted it to really look dirty and dingy and spooky. Now here, as you see, I am adding my rocks. I just have these large rocks on hand and I'm placing it inside of my flower pot. Now if you wanted, you can always add the rocks before adding all of the foam, but I wanted this to be an easy access just in case I want to remove these later on. And I am attaching them down to the foam using my hot glue gun. This is just so they stay into place and they don't move around. Next, it is now time for my favorite part, which is decorating. I am going in with some green moss that I purchased from Dollar Tree, and I am placing this all over my little plant creature. This is where you can get super creative. Once again, you can go cutesy or creepy or both, however you like. But if you've been following my channel, I like to do things a little spooky for Halloween. So I am going to place that green moss everywhere. I believe this year we are trying to go for like a mad scientist or an outbreak type of situation for our Halloween decor, so I'm definitely getting a jump start, and this will definitely fit that theme for this year. So I will continue adding moss everywhere onto my flower pot and onto my creature. I am attaching it using my hot glue gun once again, and you can always use a stronger adhesive if you want to, but since this is moss and it's very lightweight, hot glue does the trick just fine. I was done with the moss. It is now time to add little embellishments, which is a lot of greenery. I found these pieces from Dollar Tree. Once again, everything is from Dollar Tree pretty much, and I just thought they fit the theme. I really wanted it to look spooky, so once again I'm going for a darker greenery. As you see here, I have some heathers, I have some cat's tails, and I'm just going to remove them from the stem and start placing them inside of my flower pot. Now since a lot of this is foam and those greenery have a metal stake in them, all I needed to do was push down into the foam and it does hold up nicely. And then for the remainder parts, I do add some hot glue just to the leaves and then attach them to the pool noodles. And then I will add more moss to the ends of it so that everything blends in together. Once again, you can add as much greenery or as little greenery as you like. Really make this your little creature friend, and all I needed to do was continue adding the leaves all over my creature friend here, on its head, on its body, all around the flower pot, just to make it look like it was overgrown and taking over. I am attaching everything once again using my hot glue gun, but once that was done, this completes this DIY, and believe me, this has been my favorite thus far creating on this channel. Okay friends, that completes today's DIY project for you. I absolutely loved how he turned out. It is really spooky, fun to do, and it was really easy and affordable. If you find all of this stuff from Dollar Tree, you will pretty much only spend about $20 depending on how much or how little you use. Out of today's project, I only use 2 pool noodles and 1 floral pick from the florals, and then the moss, I believe I used about 1 bag. So technically this thing is really easy to make and affordable. If you enjoyed today's content, please smash that thumbs up button. It really does help out my channel. And remember friends, if you are new here and you haven't yet subscribed, I hope you do that today. All you have to do is click on that big red subscribe button down below. It is totally free, but don't forget to click on the bell notification so that YouTube can always remind you every time I upload a new video. Plus, Plus, we would love to have you here for our virtual art family. Once again, we did reach our goal before October, which was hitting 10,000 subscribers, and I am truly so grateful to all of you that has subscribed to my channel. I am so honored that you enjoyed my content and that you want to see more of it, and I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, with all that being said, I really hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to do all the YouTubey things, and as always, I will see you in the next one.